Story 1. Grandparents gifted me a trip to Rome, but my parents forced me to give it to my golden child sister. She crashed her cab on the way to the airport, so I stole the ticket back and went anyway. Hey, so I, 18F, was recently given an international trip to Rome and a check to cover my expenses there by my paternal grandparents on my birthday as a gift. They handed me an envelope with a flight ticket contained within it, and the very next day my parents started manipulating me to give it up to my sister. My older sister, June, 21F, is the golden child of the family, in case you guys haven't figured it out by now. My parents started telling me that June is an architecture major, so a trip to Rome could be just what she needed during her vacation to improve her understanding and get to see better architectural designs in person. I tried to argue with them, saying that I planned on majoring in literature, so the trip to Rome was pretty important for me as well. June already had a chance on her 18th birthday, but she had rejected an international trip when my grandparents had offered it and said that she would rather just have the money that it would cost. So now it was my turn, and I was not giving it up for her. Besides, from what I know, the airline that I was flying doesn't even offer an option to transfer your flight tickets from one person to another unless in very dire circumstances. But they told me not to worry about that. They just needed the ticket, and then they would figure out a way ahead on their own. This argument carried on for several days after my birthday, and it's been 2 weeks since my birthday. So eventually, I just gave in and told them that they were free to do whatever they wanted. It was not because I wanted to give up the international trip. I was actually really looking forward to it, but it didn't seem worth it to keep fighting with them, and I knew that they would not give up until I agreed to their terms. And they had pretty much started emotionally blackmailing me, bringing up everything that they had done for me, and in return they were only asking me for a little favor. I thought it was really unfair of them, and initially I argued with them, but a couple of days back they made a remark out of frustration, saying that they did not want the trip to go to waste, and I found it very hurtful. They tried to backpedal pretty quickly, but they had already said it. So apparently they believed that if I went on the trip it would be wasted, but if June did, it would mean something. My parents tried to make it seem like they had only made this statement because June had already graduated and a trip to Rome would look good on her resume. I don't understand how, whereas I would always have a lot of time in the future to go on such trips, unlike June, who would have to start working in a couple of months. So I decided to give up the ticket and let them have it. I just didn't want the drama of dealing with the same arguments over and over again. At least I would still have the check. Besides, I was kind of used to this kind of treatment right from when I was a kid, so I wasn't surprised. I also really did not think that the tickets were transferable according to the airline guidelines that I had gone through, so I didn't think that they would be able to do much. But I guess they had figured out a way to bypass those rules, and that's why, when I was supposed to leave for the airport yesterday, June ended up taking my boarding pass and was on her way to the airport when we received a phone call from the cops saying that there had been an accident involving June, and they had to bail her out. Now, apparently, June had tried to take control of the steering wheel while the cab driver was driving to guide him because she didn't think he was taking the right route to the airport, and out of fear of getting delayed, she made that stupid little move. So, of course, they ended up losing control of the car and crashed into a tree. June was relatively unscathed, apart from a few scratches here and there, but the cab driver was seriously hurt because it was his side of the car that had hit the tree and suffered the worst impact. So we might be looking at a broken arm and a really deep cut on the forehead for which he had to get a lot of stitches. He has pressed charges against June for causing that accident, so now my parents have to dip into their life savings to bail her out if they want to come to a settlement with the cab driver and prevent this from going to trial. And when I heard about this, I couldn't control myself, and the words just came out. I ended up saying that this was karma for my parents forcing me to give up my ticket and trip to Rome. This happened yesterday. They had just explained the entire situation to me and were leaving to go see June. And as soon as I said those words, I regretted it instantly because they looked shocked and said that this was not something that I should be joking about. I tried to take it back, but they said that words had meaning, and once I had said it, I couldn't just take it back and expect things to be fine. Now they knew that I was very selfish, and that's why I had said this about my sister getting into an accident. That pissed me off because I thought it was really hypocritical of them to say such things, especially when they themselves had said that they didn't want the trip to go to waste, since that's what they believed would have happened if I went on it. I brought that up, but they told me that they were not even going to dignify that with a response after the remark that I had made and then left to go see June at the hospital. At that point, I was really pissed off, so as a spur-of-the-moment decision, I decided to get a cab and head to June as well because it suddenly occurred to me that I was throwing away this trip for no reason because no matter what I did my family would never value me or appreciate me. Might as well have them hate me and live my life the way I want. I quickly packed a small bag with my essentials and some clothes. Then I got my ride, followed them in the cab, and once we were at the hospital, my parents and I almost showed up within minutes of each other on the floor where the cab driver was, and June was still talking to the cops and trying to explain how none of this was her fault, even though it totally was. But I was not there to talk to her. I went up to her and asked her if she still had the boarding pass, and she looked very confused and disoriented. So I just grabbed her purse and started looking through it myself, and when I found the boarding pass I just grabbed it and made a run for it back to the cab, leaving everybody confused. Then I headed to the airport, and thankfully I was able to make it just in the nick of time. I boarded my flight, and then I was off to Rome. I didn't check my phone for any calls and messages until I landed here, and only a couple of hours ago did I find out exactly how pissed my family is at me. My parents obviously think that I had been extremely insensitive because June had just been in a terrible accident that she herself had caused. But they seem to gloss over that fact every time, and all I cared about was my trip. June is pissed because she thinks that I stole this opportunity from her, even though it was she who stole this from me in the first place. If anything, I'm just reclaiming what was mine and had been stupid enough to give it away anyway. The general consensus is that what I did was not the right thing to do, so I need to apologize to them, but I don't know if I really should. June also sent me a message saying that my parents were going to have to depend on their savings to come to a settlement with the driver, and I knew that my family's financial condition was not that great, so instead of frolicking in Rome I could have saved the money and handed my parents the check that was given to me on my birthday, but I was just being plain selfish. So I'm sorry for taking off to Rome after my sister got into an accident. Edit. Hi, so there are a lot of questions that people have, and I'll answer them so it's easier for you guys to understand the situation. First and foremost, what was up with the boarding pass? Well, I really don't think that my parents or June were able to figure out a way to bypass the rules about the transfer of tickets from one person to another. I think her plan was to just get to the airport and wing it or something because if they had managed to be able to do something about it, I wouldn't have been able to board with my passport since they would have required June. So I think they didn't even have a plan in the first place, which turned out to be lucky for me. Now, why did I continue to live with my family if they have always treated me badly? Why didn't I just go and live with my grandparents or literally anybody else? Well, you need to understand that this is the kind of treatment that I've been used to ever since I was a child. I'm not saying that it makes it fine all of a sudden, but my parents' preference for my sister used to make me feel like I needed to do better to win them over, not that they should have treated me better in any case. It was a strange and self-sacrificial way of thinking. I can't explain it, but that's just what I used to believe. So I spent the past 18 years of my life trying to be the best daughter to them so they would finally like me, and it led to a lot of disappointment, heartbreak, and frustration for me, but I never wanted to give up. I was a fool to believe that they would eventually come around since they were still my parents, but that's just how a child's mind works. Also, my grandparents don't live here. They live way outside of the city, away from everything that I have ever known. I didn't want to change my lifestyle, even though it had occurred to me many times that I would be better off living with them. They also don't know how my parents treat me. I don't think anybody in my family does because we are pretty good at hiding it when we are amongst people. Anyway, that's why I did not ever consider leaving my family behind, but I think I will do that because I'm an adult now. I don't think that I need to please anybody anymore. Coming to my relationship with June, all I can say is we have never been particularly close. I don't hate her, and neither does she have anything against me. We just don't get along, and that's it. As for my family's financial condition, we are not really rich. In fact, I would say that we are at the lower end of the spectrum since my mom is a housewife and my dad is a high school football coach. They rely on my grandparents for money quite often. I don't know how they're going to tackle this situation though, since if they want money from my grandparents they are going to have to fess up to what they did. So that's how it is with my family. And a lot of you guys were asking me why June was sitting in the passenger seat of the cab anyway, and I really don't have an answer for that. It's just out of habit, I guess, because even when we as a family used to go on road trips and stuff, she would always sit in the passenger seat. That's her spot, I guess. But yeah, she always sits in the passenger seat, and I think it might be because she's a bit of a control freak. I mean, she literally grabbed the steering wheel of the car because she thought a cab driver wouldn't know the right way to the airport and would drive her right into traffic. She thought she knew better than him, which is what caused the accident. So you can imagine the degree to which she needs to be in control. She even left for the airport almost 5 hours before the flight was supposed to take off. Make of that what you will. Update 1. Hey, so I thought about it for a couple of days, and I decided to just let loose and enjoy my trip because it's unlikely that I'll get an opportunity like this for the next couple of years after I start college. I don't need to worry about my parents or back home. They're all adults, and they can take care of this themselves. Besides, it's not my fault that they decided to stake a claim to what was not theirs originally and ended up getting hit back by karma in the process. You were right. It was foolish of me to expect them to be grateful for my sacrifice. They would still always hate me, and I don't need to give up on my fun for that. Anyway, I'm currently living it up in Rome and having the time of my life. I spoke to my grandparents this morning as well, and I explained the entire situation to them, which is the first time I have spoken to anybody about what I go through at home. Not even my friends knew about the mistreatment that I used to face, my parents, and how they were always partial to my sister. Talking about it felt really good. Most of you guys had this advice for me that I should speak up about this and let somebody know, so I decided to tell my grandparents, and they were both shocked that this was going on for so long and I had never said a word about it. I explained to them I always thought that if I kept my mouth shut and kept trying to be a good daughter to my parents, they would eventually be grateful for me and appreciate me, but it was more than clear to me now that this would never happen. They told me that I had done the right thing and said that after I came back from my trip to Rome, I was supposed to go straight to them and nowhere else. They said that they were going to arrange for me to move out of my parents' house and start living with them instead. And when I told them that I would have to move out for college in the fall, they told me that I wouldn't have to worry about it because the college that I had picked was out of state, and they said that they were going to bear all the expenses for that. So I guess just one conversation with my grandparents was all that I needed to absolutely fix my life, because now I don't even have to worry about where I'm going to live once I finally get back, since I've pissed my parents off real bad. And I think it's unlikely that they will be welcoming me back with open arms. My parents had already made it clear to me in the beginning when I had started applying to colleges that they would not be able to pay for my tuition, even though they had done it for June. They actually used it as an excuse, saying that they had already covered the expenses for one daughter to go to college, but I would have to take care of myself on my own. And now I don't even have to worry about that. So I'm pretty happy with how things have turned out, and within a week I'll be back home. But now I will definitely be living a better life as compared to earlier. Update 2. Hi, so my trip came to an end a couple of days ago, and now I'm living with my grandparents just as they had instructed me to. I went over to their place as soon as I had landed here, and I was pretty surprised to see that they already had the guest room set up for me to stay, and all the things from my parents' house had been moved here once I came back, and they welcomed me warmly. My grandparents told me that after my conversation with them, where I had told them everything, they had gone to confront my parents. They were supposed to meet anyway because my parents had called them up on the evening that the accident with June had taken place, and they had called them over so they could discuss what to do and how to go ahead, because my parents really did not want to dip into their savings for the money for the settlement, and they definitely did not want this to go to trial, because then June would be in real trouble because there was dashcam footage to prove that she had caused the accident, and an out-of-court settlement is the only way to go for them. But the cab driver was apparently demanding an incredibly high amount, and they needed my grandparents to help them out here. But when they met, my grandparents brought up the situation with me first and asked my parents if it was true that they had been treating me badly all my life, and had even asked me to give up my trip so June could go in my place. At first, they apparently tried to skirt around the question by saying that they were here to discuss the situation with June and how to get her out of trouble, and I was in Rome having the time of my life, so it seemed unnecessary to talk about these things. But my grandparents insisted on talking about me because they wanted to get to the bottom of this, and eventually my parents just snapped and said that it was true, but I had proved that this was exactly the kind of treatment that I deserved by abandoning my family in their time of trouble. Apparently, my parents had said that I had only shown up at the hospital to grab my flight ticket, so I would be able to make it in time for my trip without caring about what June or even what they were going through. They said that I had always been jealous of June because she had been better than me at every single thing, and I couldn't stand it, so that was really not their fault. They claimed that they had never treated me unfairly, which was a huge lie. My parents said that I was just being entitled and spoiled, and they were no longer going to entertain it when I came back. That was all that my grandparents needed to hear to make up their minds about cutting off their only son. My grandparents and parents got into an argument over this, and my parents ended up telling them that they were free to leave and said that they didn't need their help anymore since they were actually supporting my selfish behavior. They also said that they didn't want me back, so if my grandparents wanted to take me with them, they were more than welcome to do that as well. So my grandparents eventually got people to pack all the things in my room and moved my stuff to their house so I could make myself comfortable. After my grandparents told me about whatever had happened with my parents, I ended up crying because it just hurt. I had always known that my parents couldn't care less about me, but they were all that I had known for the past 18 years, and my heart was broken. I literally pray that nobody else has to go through crap like this. But anyway, my grandparents were there for me all along, and I'm really very grateful for that. Anyway, now I'm not confused. I'm going to be living with them, and this is my home now. I'll definitely be going to college in a couple of months, but until then my grandparents have promised to be there with me, and even when I'm off to college they have said that I have nothing to worry about since they're going to cover all my expenses. I have had no contact with my parents or June after I came back, and I hadn't even checked the last couple of messages that they had sent me because I was trying to make the best of my trip. So I finally checked them today since I thought I was in a better place mentally. And I'm so glad that I did not check these messages earlier because then I definitely would have had another mental breakdown. June's messages were all along the same lines. I'm selfish and entitled and I'm spoiled, and she's glad that she won't have anything to do with me at this point on Earth because I don't deserve her company anyway. I think she got that a little bit twisted. I think she's the one who doesn't deserve my company, but whatever, it doesn't even matter to me. It's really my parents that hurt me more than anything else, but at this point I don't even feel surprised at the things they say to me. My parents sent me a couple of messages saying that what I had done was incredibly heartless and they should have stopped me the second that I showed up at the hospital, but it was their failure that they had not managed to raise me right, and then I slipped through their hands even at the hospital when I made a run for it so I could go on the trip. My family was such a difficult situation. I did not respond to that message. They've been treated even though my parents had always done everything in their power to make sure that I had a comfortable life. I guess my parents don't understand that having a comfortable life is very different from having a good childhood. They said that they sent me to school, fed me, clothed me, and I had a roof over my head at all times. There was really nothing more that I could have asked for, but in spite of all of that I was still cribbing about how I was treated by my parents. They said that just because I was jealous of June I couldn't make them out to be the villains because that was simply unfair, and then they said that they were right about calling me a waste because that's all I really was. I had wasted their time and energy for so many years, and now they were finally glad to be rid of me. That really got to me and I almost cried about it, but I had promised myself after speaking to my grandparents that I was not going to let their harsh words get to me anymore because it's just not worth it. So I didn't cry, but I did block my parents so that they wouldn't be able to have any access to me anymore. Hopefully, I'm going to start my healing journey and get over this eventually because I really think that after all the trauma that they have caused me, I seriously need to move on and erase every trace of them from my brain completely if I want to live my best life. I don't know if that's actually possible, but it's worth a try. Update 3. So the funniest and craziest thing happened today. It's been close to 2 weeks since I returned from my trip, and so far I have had absolutely no idea what's been going on with my parents and June, but I'm assuming that they are still struggling to come up with the money so they can have an out-of-court settlement with the cab driver. Because this afternoon my parents showed up at my grandparents' house, and they were in a vengeful mood. Thankfully, they did not even acknowledge my existence when I opened the door and walked right past me to go to the living room and sit down with my grandparents. I had no idea what to do when I was lurking around the living room, but my grandparents told me to sit down with them. They knew that my parents would not be too happy about this decision of including me in the conversation, and I could see it on their faces, but if they were pissed about it, they did not say anything. Anyway, as soon as we were all seated, my grandparents asked them what they were there for since the last time that they had spoken to each other my parents had made it very clear that they wanted nothing to do with them because they had been supporting my decisions. My parents said that they were still going to stick to that, but before they cut each other off entirely they had some scores to settle, and then they brought out a document with a bunch of calculations on it and said that there was a huge amount of money that they had spent on raising me, and since my grandparents had so graciously taken over the duties of parents they expected themselves to be absolved, and said that they wanted all the money that they had spent on me so far to be paid to them by my grandparents. Now they were the ones who were responsible for me. I was shocked that they were here to make such a ridiculous demand, and all I could do was just look at them because I had no words for how low this was. I could tell that this was just a way to make us all feel small because they were demanding almost $120,000. It was just crazy. But then my grandparents said that they just needed a moment to themselves in private and left the room to discuss this between themselves. There was a very awkward silence because it was just me and my parents in the living room, and they refused to acknowledge me in any way whatsoever. They didn't even look at me, and I found it very awkward. But thankfully, after a couple of minutes, my grandparents were back. They took their seats. My grandpa tried to be as calm and polite as possible and said that it was true that they were claiming responsibility and they would gladly repay the amount that my parents had spent on me so far. I was about to interrupt because I thought it was very unfair that they were even asking for this kind of money since it was not something that they had done as a favor to me. They were my parents and they were supposed to raise me. They had only done their duty, and even then they had done the bare minimum, so they did not deserve even $1 out of my grandparents. But my grandparents told me not to interrupt, and then they went on to say that they would repay this amount, but only on one condition: that my parents repay all the money that they had borrowed from my grandparents over the years. And that had my parents absolutely stumped. I could see on their faces that they had been owned, and I thought it was very funny because they looked like deer caught in headlights. So I had to leave the room because I wanted to laugh so bad at them. After that, I didn't come back down from my room until my parents had already left. And when I asked my grandparents what had happened after they left the room, they told me that my parents had tried to argue their way out of this, but there was no way that they could do anything. So eventually they just ended up cursing out all of us and left in a huff, which is just so typical of them. But anyway, I don't think they will be back anytime soon after this stunning humiliation. And even if they come back, I don't think it'll be a problem for anyone since my grandparents have proven that they are more than capable of handling them on their own. The fact that my father is their only son is not going to make them go soft on them, and I'm going to be off to college in a couple of months anyway, so I'm honestly just looking forward to that. And yeah, going on the trip to Rome was probably the best decision that I could have made. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. My ex-wife and I met at the construction renovation project I was working on. She was an interior designer, and I am a contractor. I've owned my company for 8 years now and did very well for myself. The firm she worked for were the designers for the renovations, and she'd come visit for field measurements and checking work every week. One day, we were outside talking about the project, and she complimented my team's work, saying she told her firm that they should work with us more often for future projects. I thought, awesome. This is not something I'd normally do on the job, as I typically keep it professional, but I found her attractive, and I asked, "So, are you married?" There was some awkward silence, and she was hesitant to answer, as I could tell she wanted to keep it professional as well. With a smile, she said, "No, I'm not married." I followed up with, "Can we grab lunch sometime?" And she said, "Sure. How about next week?" That's when she was coming back out to check the progress of some work on the project. We went on that date the following week to Arby's. Yes, the most romantic restaurant in the world. It was great, though. But while we were talking, laughing, and having a great time, she, out of nowhere, said, "Wow, I would totally marry you." She put her hand over her mouth as if to say, "I can't believe I said that crap." I just smiled and said, "Good, good." Until the project was completed, we had lunch every week at Arby's. That was our go-to spot. Sounds like such a lovely story where a couple meets, shares a connection, goes on to marry, and lives happily ever after. No, not at all. This woman is pure evil. We married in 2013 after being exclusive for 3 years and dating, knowing each other for 1.5 years. Her firm held Christmas company parties every year, and I'd attend. I remember the first one we went to. This guy, John, was very touchy-feely with her. She would shrug him off or whatnot, but every year he was like that. The second year I went, it ticked me off because I thought he was being very inappropriate and wanted to dance with her and all. He would get very drunk. She would pretend like she had no idea why he was like that and blamed it on his drinking. I later discovered who he truly was to her. We didn't stay the night after the party, and we argued all the way back to my place. I was asking her if they had something going on because he's too comfortable with her, and she'd say, "No, he's just like that." I asked her, "Do you like it?" She said, "Of course not." I said, "Well, go tell your..." She claimed I was overreacting and told me I had nothing to worry about. Fast forward to next year's Christmas party. We were engaged. I proposed in front of her family at Thanksgiving. At her firm's Christmas party, everyone was congratulating me. Old Johnny Boy was moaning the heck out of me the whole night, not even talking to my wife. This year, I'm not exaggerating, he looked like a white ice cube when Ice Cube is that mad. That face, just like it, almost like he was trying to intimidate me. John is an assistant project manager or something like that. He pretty much does the work his higher-ups don't want to do. I tapped my wife and said, "I think your work husband is jealous." That was the joke between her and me about John, him being her work husband. She shrugged it off and said, "You no way." But I let her know how he was looking at me. She said I should stop focusing on him, that he's nuts. So we ignored him for the rest of the night. We went on to get married in July 2013. Interestingly, at our reception, I wanted the DJ to play one of my favorite songs from Charcoal at the time. It's called Power Trip, but ironically, instead, he had the song Forbidden Fruit by Graham play instead of the Power Trip song I requested. I only had one DJ call song for him to play, and coincidentally, he played the song Forbidden Fruit. Forbidden Fruit is a song by Jake Hall and Kendrick Lamar. And if anyone is familiar with the reference, Forbidden Fruit is a name given to the fruit growing in the Garden of Eden, which God commanded mankind not to eat in the biblical story. Adam and Eve eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil and were exiled from Eden. I think back now and say, wow, what a sign! I didn't even catch it. October of that year, we found out my wife was pregnant. I was over the moon excited and later discovered she was pregnant with boys. 2 boys. Twins. I thought, wow, I hit the jackpot. Fast forward to her Christmas party in 2019 at her firm. She said she wanted to go alone this year and I should stay home with the kids. Her excuse was that she was overwhelmed with everything and needed a night out for herself. I wasn't happy about this but ended up staying home with the boys that night. She didn't come home that night like she said either. I blew up her phone until it started going straight to voicemail. She got home the next morning and I went off on her. I just felt in my gut something was wrong. She said she drank too much and fell asleep in another female coworker's room. She started crying and said, "I finally get some freedom, and I'm accused of wrongdoings." I was so ticked. The crying didn't even work, and I continued to snap at her. "You need to grow the heck up. You're an adult with a family. I don't mind you going out alone, but don't try to lie to me and avoid my calls like that ever again." She ran into the room, and 5 minutes later, I heard the shower turn on. My kids were still asleep, so I went straight for her phone. I just had a gut feeling, man. The phone was locked, so I demanded her to give me the passcode, but she refused, saying I was crazy and that she's taking the children to her mom's, that I'm scaring her. I calmed down and sat on the couch until she got out of the shower. When she came out to the living room area, I told her I was leaving. I just needed some air. I didn't want to leave the boys unattended. I grabbed my keys and left. I drove to Bob Evans. After eating, I started drinking coffee and realized I had my headphones with me. I turned on Apple Music, shuffled my playlist, and guess what song came on? I kid you not. It was Jake Hall's Forbidden Fruit song on the Born Ner album. I remember thinking, this is the song the DJ played at my wedding that I had not requested. It hit me right then and there. Something in my gut told me that this woman was lying to me, and I was determined to get to the bottom of it. I Google searched how to hire a private investigator. I ended up finding a guy and contacted him via Facebook. I told him my situation, and he was certain he could help. I'll be honest. I was not optimistic about the PI. I kind of figured it was just all BS. Though, I remembered my wife's coworker's name. I won't say his full name, but I searched him on Facebook, found him easily, especially knowing his middle initial from their company website. I friended him, as his page was private, and messaged him asking if he and I could talk. He accepted my friend request and said, "Who are you?" Not sure how he didn't know who I was, with my wife and I picture in the profile at the time, but I told him who I am and who my wife is, and he replied, "Dude, it's over between her and me. Whatever freaky crap you got going on, I don't want anything to do with it anymore. Have a great day." I replied, "Over with what, dude?" "What's your number? Please, man, please." He asked for my number. I gave it to him. A few minutes later, I got a call from an unknown number. It was him. When I found out it was him, I asked, "Dude, what do you mean it's over between you and my wife?" He said, "She told me that you knew and that you all had an open relationship where both of you had one other partner. You had some girl and she had me. But I was done 6 months ago after she gave me the chlamydia you gave her, you piece of crap." "What? I don't have any chlamydia." He said, Well, she did and she gave it to me. She said she had no idea, and you are the only person that could have given it to her. I knew not to sign up for you all's freaky situation. I said my wife and I were never in an open relationship." He said I should take it up with her then, that he doesn't even speak to her anymore and avoided her at work, and he immediately hung up the phone. I was sweating bullets at this time, sitting in my car. It was cold outside, by the way. I was scared. I had STDs. My team was able to handle work while I was away for a week. I had to get checked for STDs, contact a lawyer, and DNA test my boys. My plan was to never say anything to her, just file for divorce, get everything in order, and hit her with it. I got back home and she and the boys were gone. I assumed they were at her mother's, like she said. Later that day, I got a call from the private investigator. I updated him on some stuff and he wished me luck. He explained how he could get evidence for me. 1, he was to do some background investigation, 2, physical surveillance, and 3, something called honey trapping. He had to explain that one to me. When he said the last thing, honey trapping, I really thought this guy was full of it. I'm glad I didn't write him off, though. He told me he was an ex-police officer, a 54-year-old man who hit the lottery for $40,000 the year after he divorced his cheating wife. He told me he used the $40,000 to go into business with his brother in 2013. They both sold that company 1 year later to a startup tech company. His brother was some type of IT guy who developed some software. I don't remember the name of the company it was sold to, but apparently, it's a very well-known company. He didn't say he was a millionaire, but he said he never has to work again, though. He left the force and later started to get bored, so he started this private investigation service. He travels all around the US helping people if he needs to. He helps very wealthy people to your average Joe. He said he's also assisted with helping women get evidence on their cheating husbands. He does not discriminate because he despises cheaters. His ex-wife was a cheater, and 1 out of 5 of their kids they had together was not his. He said he still acted as the father to that kid, and the relationship with him and all of his kids is stronger than ever. Anyway, he went to work. This man knows everyone, lawyers, doctors, people in the FBI. His brother is some IT guru, you name it. He worked with one famous person also. I learned that this guy is legit during my getting to know him process. Like I said, he went to work while I went on the hunt for a lawyer. About the time I found my lawyer, he'd already found out a lot. First, I'll refer to this man as S or Shark. Shark is a lawyer my ex-wife was having an affair with and the father of the twins. Now, when the PI told me about this and how he and my ex-wife would have lunch almost every day together, it hurt. That's how we met and what we used to do, have lunch together often. He had photos of them at hotels. He picked up audio of them having lunch at a place called Culver's Restaurant. It was a bit loud, but he was able to point out when their conversations were picked up better with the help of his brother's expertise with messing with the audio. You could hear on the audio him saying, "So, how are my boys?" Now, if you would have said, "How are the boys?" then I would have thought he was asking about our kids. But when he said, "My boys," I swear fire lit up in my stomach. I talked to my lawyer about getting my kids' DNA tested, and I wanted to know if it was legal or if I needed her consent. His exact words were, although the mother can refuse a piece of the paternity test, the mother's permission is not needed to carry out such a test, provided her DNA is not being submitted for testing and the potential father has parental responsibility for any child being tested. I scheduled the test to be done on a Friday of the same week. My wife was still at her mother's. Put that in quotes because I'm sure you even know that that's a darn lie. Anyway, I told her I needed to see my boys, and we arranged for me to pick them up on Friday from her mother's. When we spoke, she told me her exact words, "I hope you come to your senses and get your crap together. I would like to come home, and the boys would like to also, So get your head out of your butt and stop treating me like crap. My reply was, yes, honey. Okay. Little did she know I was about to drop a bombshell. I got me and my boys' test completed. It didn't take long as I thought it would, since it was only on Friday. I could have gotten the results back that day if I had done it earlier, but I received everything Monday morning. I was not their father. I cried like a baby. I know most people would probably be excited and say, well, I'm off the clock. No, this is something you would have to go through to understand. If she was in my face that very moment, I probably would have thrown my life away by doing something to her. I talked to my lawyer about all the evidence I had. Photos, hotel meetings, emails that my PI gathered, and of course the results of the paternity test. I told my lawyer, I want to bury this a hole. My lawyer nodded. Before I left, I gave my lawyer my ex-wife's office building and my contact to my PI. My hired PI served my ex-wife the divorce papers, and it was quite the show. He recorded everything for me. I was asking him if he could record the entire showdown. My PI said it was not a problem at all. This wouldn't be the first time he's done something like this and surely won't be the last, folks. I will walk you through how it all went down. The guy turned on his video recording right before getting out of the car. I now know he used some sort of device that pinned to his shirt pocket. In the beginning of the video, you can hear him say, I love this part of the job. He's parked on the street, so he gets out and feeds his meter. I asked him later on, when I saw the video, why the heck did you put so many coins in there? He said, you never know how long this crap is going to take. He had to walk a bit to the building. My ex-wife's firm is downtown. He's greeting people. Good morning, sir. Howdy, ma'am. Good day, sir, while walking to my ex-wife's building. The video is freaking hysterical. He finally gets inside and says to security that he's there to visit my ex-wife at Each Annex Interiors. Completely fake firm name. She pats him down and tells him where to go. He gets to the floor where their suite is and tells the receptionist, once he gets inside, that he's here to see my ex-wife's name. He waits for close to 8 minutes. Then someone else comes up asking him what he's there for. He again says he needs to speak with my ex-wife and that he has a package for her. This guy offered to take it, and he says, I have to give it to her directly, sir. The guy was asking if it were materials or samples. You can just leave them. Again, my PI insisted on giving them to her directly. The guy let him into the office, and you can see my ex-wife in the meeting room sitting with 5 other guy coworkers. They're laughing and drinking coffee. The guy led my guy inside so he could give my ex-wife the envelope. The PI approached my ex-wife asking, Mrs. Stone? Fake name. She says yes. The PI says, you've been served, hands her the envelope and walks away. My ex-wife says, served? What? He's headed out. And you can hear my ex-wife saying, what the hell? The envelope also had pictures of her and Shark, along with paternity results. Before I could even get back to the elevator, you could hear my ex-wife saying, no, get your butt back here. He turns and says, ma'am, I'm only doing my job. Have a wonderful day. And he's waiting for the elevator to come. She's cursing him out. Are you freaking kidding me? That time had to have been when she was blowing up my phone when I failed to answer. The text messages started coming. We need to talk. Tell me this is a joke. Why would you want to do this to your kids? My lawyer knew Shark, the lawyer my ex-wife was having an affair with. He spilled the beans off the record to my lawyer. Shark was a well-known lawyer in my city. I didn't know him, but other lawyers did, but seemed to get along quite well with my lawyer. According to my lawyer, he had a real deep conversation with him. This is not Shark's first time cheating on his wife. She has forgiven him before, but this time was a bit much for her. Months later, still during our divorce proceedings, Shark and the twins got DNA tested, and the boys were indeed his. My lawyer told me all of this. Shark's wife started proceeding to divorce him and take everything he has, as she was a stay-at-home mom their entire marriage. During my divorce, my ex-wife continued to beg me not to do this. I remained no contact, as my lawyer advised. When my lawyer told me that Shark was getting a divorce for his part, I truly assumed him and my ex-wife would be together. But apparently, Shark was too busy trying to do what he could to save his marriage. My ex-wife was fired from her job, not because of any infidelity she had with John, but she lost it one day and went off on a client on the phone. Apparently, it wasn't the first time it happened that month. I guess the stress of divorce was wearing on her, and she would snap at everyone, and her job performance was terrible, though she was eventually replaced and fired. She cried in our small court hearing, saying how she has nothing now because she is getting fired and all of the stress of the divorce. I found out the details of why she was fired exactly through one of her coworkers. They told me everything and how John told some of them that she gave him chlamydia. I was asking the coworker to be honest with me. I wouldn't be upset. I asked her, "Did you and others know that my wife was cheating on me with John or anyone else?" My ex-wife's coworker said, "Yeah, who doesn't have a work husband or wife these days? Usually it doesn't go past the office, but sometimes it happens." Even though I immediately got ticked, I thanked her for her honesty. I will never marry again. I will never tell any man to get married. It's just not worth it. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My parents asked me to leave my home because I didn't give my savings to them. Now, after 8 months, my mom is calling me for financial help. I'm a 20-year-old college student, and until last week, I lived at home with my parents and my older sister, Aubrey, 24. Our family isn't wealthy, but we've always managed to get by. For the past 2 years, I've been working part-time at a local bookstore to save up money for grad school. It's been tough balancing work and studies, but I've managed to put aside a decent amount. Some background on my family dynamic. My parents have always favored Aubrey. For as long as I can remember, they've pampered her constantly and let her get away with pretty much anything. Aubrey is, to put it bluntly, bratty and full of herself, but my parents never seem to notice or care. This favoritism has been playing out in countless situations over the years. When we were kids, Aubrey would often break my toys or mess up my school projects, but my parents would always dismiss it as siblings being siblings. They'd buy her a new toy to make up for the one she broke, while I'd be left with nothing. As we got older, the favoritism only became more pronounced. For Aubrey's 16th birthday, my parents threw her a lavish party and bought her a car. When my 16th birthday rolled around 2 years later, I got a cake from the grocery store and a $50 gift card. One incident that really stands out happened last Thanksgiving. My mom had spent hours preparing a traditional dinner, including a homemade pumpkin pie for dessert. When Aubrey saw the pie, she threw a fit because she wanted pecan pie instead. She actually knocked the pumpkin pie onto the floor and stomped on it like a toddler having a tantrum. Instead of getting mad at her for this outrageous behavior, my parents apologized to Aubrey. They drove 30 minutes each way to the only open bakery in town to buy her a pecan pie. Meanwhile, I was left to clean up the mess of the ruined pumpkin pie. Aubrey has also had a long string of boyfriends that she brings home. My parents welcome each one like he's already part of the family, no matter how Aubrey treats them or how long the relationship lasts. Her current boyfriend, Mark, has been around for about 6 months. He's a pretty stubborn and opinionated guy, but for some reason, my parents adore him. Mark's presence has only worsened the existing family dynamics. He seems to take pleasure in putting me down and asserting his dominance in the family. My parents, of course, always take his side. For instance, last month, we all went out to dinner for my dad's birthday. I had just received my tax refund, so I offered to treat everyone as a special gesture. Before I could even finish speaking, Mark loudly proclaimed that he would be paying instead. I politely declined and explained that I wanted to do this for my dad. Mark got visibly angry and started arguing with me at the table, saying I was trying to show off. Instead of intervening, my parents took his side and told me to stop being difficult. In the end, Mark paid for the meal, and my parents thanked him profusely while completely ignoring my original offer. Another time, I was watching a movie in the living room when Mark and Aubrey came in without asking. Mark changed the channel to a sports game he wanted to watch. When I pointed out that I was already watching something, he laughed and said, "Too bad. Squirt." Majority rules. My parents, who were in the kitchen, overheard and told me to let Mark watch what he wanted because he was a guest. These are just a few examples of the daily, small favoritism I've had to deal with. Despite all this, I've tried to maintain a good relationship with my family. I help out around the house, keep my grades up, and work my part-time job without complaining. The current situation started about a week ago. I was showing my friend a funny text on my phone when Mark happened to glance over. He saw my bank account balance in one of the notifications. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I should have known it would lead to trouble. A few days later, during dinner, Aubrey announced to our parents that she wanted to start her own small business selling handmade jewelry. My parents were thrilled and immediately started discussing how they could help her get started. They asked about her business plan, potential costs, and marketing strategies. Aubrey, in her typical fashion, hadn't thought any of this through. She just liked the idea of being a business owner and wanted to jump in without any real planning. Then Aubrey dropped the bomb. She said she knew I had a lot of money saved up and suggested I give it to her to fund her business. I was shocked and felt betrayed. I knew Mark must have told her about seeing my account balance. I tried to calmly explain that the money was for my education and future. I told them how hard I'd worked at my part-time job to save that money, often taking extra shifts and working holidays. My parents got upset and said I was being selfish. They argued that I should support my sister's dreams and that her success would benefit the whole family. I pointed out that Aubrey had no experience in jewelry making or running a business. I suggested that if she was serious about this, she should start small, maybe take some classes or start an online store with minimal investment, but my parents wouldn't listen. They were already imagining Aubrey as a successful entrepreneur. Over the next few days, my parents kept pressuring me to give Aubrey my savings. They guilt me by saying I owed it to the family since I lived at home rent-free. They brought up every little thing they'd ever done for me, from buying me school supplies to driving me to soccer practice years ago. They made it sound like I was ungrateful and selfish for not wanting to hand over my hard-earned money. I stood my ground and refused. I tried to explain that while I supported Aubrey's ambitions, I couldn't put my own future in danger. I suggested that if they believed in her business idea so much, they could take out a loan or use their own savings to help her. This only made them angrier. The situation got worse when Aubrey and Mark got involved. Aubrey would cry to our parents about how I was crushing her dreams. Mark would make mean comments about how I thought I was better than everyone else. The atmosphere at home became unbearable. Things came to a head yesterday. My parents sat me down for what they called a serious talk. They gave me an ultimatum: either give Aubrey the money or move out. They said if I wasn't going to contribute to the family, I couldn't live there anymore. My mom said, if you can save all that money while living here for free, you can afford to get your own place. My dad added, you're obviously not a team player, so maybe it's time you learned how the real world works. I was hurt and angry. I felt like my own parents were choosing Aubrey's whim over my carefully planned future. I decided to leave on my own terms before they could kick me out. That night, while everyone was asleep, I packed up my stuff. I made sure to take all my important documents, like my birth certificate and social security card. I also logged into all my bank accounts and changed the passwords, just in case. I left a note explaining why I was leaving and went to stay with a friend. Since then, my phone has been blowing up with calls and texts from my family. My parents alternate between guilt trips and anger. They're saying I'm tearing the family apart and being incredibly selfish. Aubrey has been posting dramatic statuses on social media about how her own brother abandoned her. Mark even showed up at my workplace to shout at me, saying I was breaking Aubrey's heart and ruining her chances at success. Some of my extended family members have reached out after hearing a twisted version of events from my parents. Most of them are taking my parents' side, saying I should go home and make things right. Only my grandmother seemed doubtful of the story and asked for my side of things. I feel awful about the whole situation. Despite everything, I love my family and never wanted it to come to this. I've worked so hard for that money, taking on extra shifts and missing out on social events to save up. It represents my future and my dreams of going to grad school. I don't think it's fair for them to demand I give it up, especially for such an ill-conceived plan. At the same time, I feel guilty for moving out so abruptly. I worry that I'm overreacting or that I should have tried harder to make them understand my perspective. The thought of being estranged from my family is heartbreaking, even though I know they haven't treated me fairly. I'm now crashing on my friend's couch and trying to figure out my next steps. I'm looking for a new place to live and considering taking a semester off to work full-time and save up more money. The stress of the situation is affecting my studies, and I'm worried about how this will impact my future. So, Reddit, should I give my sister my savings and go back home? Or should I handle the situation differently? I'm lost and could really use some outside perspective on this mess. Update. It's been 8 months since I left home over my parents trying to force me to give my savings to my sister. A lot has changed. After moving out, I found a small room to rent near my college. It's not much, but it's mine. I've been balancing work and studies pretty well. I picked up more hours at the bookstore and even started tutoring on the side to make ends meet. It's been tough, but I'm managing. The best thing that's happened is meeting Sam. We met in one of my classes about 5 months ago. She's smart, kind, and incredibly supportive. When I told her about my family situation, she listened without judgment and has been there for me ever since. For the first few months after I left, my family kept trying to contact me. The messages ranged from angry accusations to guilt-tripping pleas for me to come home. I maintained minimal contact, mostly just letting them know I was safe and focusing on my studies. Last week, everything changed. I was studying with Sam when my phone rang. It was my mom. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. My mom was crying on the other end of the line. She said they needed my help urgently. When I asked what was wrong, she just kept saying it was a medical emergency and that my dad needed help. She begged me to come home. I was confused and worried. I told her I needed to know exactly what was going on before I could decide what to do. She hesitated, then finally started explaining. After I left home, Aubrey and Mark had kept pressuring my parents to help start Aubrey's jewelry business. My parents, feeling guilty about how things had ended with me, decided to support Aubrey's dreams. My dad took out a large loan to fund the business. At first, things seemed to be going well. Aubrey and Mark appeared to be taking the business seriously. They had meetings with my parents, discussing plans and showing them sketches of jewelry designs. My parents thought they were finally seeing Aubrey grow up and take responsibility. 2 months ago, Aubrey and Mark told my parents they needed to go to another city to source materials and meet with potential suppliers. My parents gave them most of the loan money for the trip. Aubrey and Mark left and never came back. My mom said they hadn't heard from them in weeks. Aubrey and Mark weren't answering calls or responding to messages. Their social media accounts had been deactivated. It was clear now that they had run away with the loan money. My parents were devastated. Not only had they lost a huge amount of money, but their daughter had betrayed them. Now they were stuck with a massive loan they couldn't repay. The bank was threatening to foreclose on their house. As I listened to my mom's sobs on the phone, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me felt justified. This was exactly the kind of irresponsible behavior I had warned them about, but mostly I felt sad for my parents. They had made a huge mistake, but they didn't deserve this. I told my mom I was sorry they were going through this, but I wasn't in a position to help financially. I had just barely gotten on my feet and was still struggling to balance my own expenses with saving for grad school. She cried harder but said she understood. After I hung up, I told Sam what had happened. She listened carefully, then suggested I reconsider helping my parents. She pointed out that this could be an opportunity to mend my relationship with them. Sam said that while they had treated me unfairly in the past, they were still my family and were in genuine need now. I spent the next few days thinking hard about what to do. I looked over my finances and talked more with Sam. In the end, I decided to help my parents, but on my own terms. I called my dad and told him I was willing to help, but I needed to know all the details first. We met at a coffee shop near my place. It was the first time I'd seen him in months. My dad looked older and more tired than I remembered. He broke down as he explained the full situation. The loan was for $40,000. Aubrey and Mark had taken about $33,000 with them when they left. The rest had been spent on initial business expenses and the family's living costs over the past months. I told my dad I was willing to help pay off the loan, but I had conditions. First, I would make the payments directly to the bank, not give money to my parents. Second, I would only be able to pay in small installments over time. Third, they needed to file a police report about Aubrey and Mark's actions. My dad agreed to everything, He apologized for how they had treated me and admitted they had been wrong to favor Aubrey for so long. He said losing Aubrey had made them realize how much they had taken me for granted. Over the next week, we worked out a plan. I would move back home to save on rent. The money I saved would go towards the loan payments. My parents agreed to treat me like an adult and respect my independence. We also agreed to family counseling to work on our relationship. It's been a month since I moved back home. Things are different. My parents are trying hard to repair our relationship. They ask about my studies and work and actually listen when I talk. They've stopped making comments about my choices or comparing me to others. The situation with Aubrey is still painful for all of us. The police haven't been able to locate her or Mark yet. My parents are coming to terms with the fact that she might never come back. It's been hard for them to accept that their actions over the years contributed to Aubrey becoming the person she is. Financially, it's tight. A large chunk of my income is going towards the loan payments. I've had to put my grad school plans on hold for now, but I'm hopeful that we'll get through this eventually. Sam has been incredibly supportive through all of this. She often comes over for dinner and has helped my parents and me navigate some difficult conversations. My parents adore her, which is nice but also a bit ironic given how they treated my girlfriends in the past. Looking back, I don't regret leaving when I did. That time on my own helped me grow and gain confidence in myself, but I'm glad I was able to help when my family truly needed it. It's not perfect, but we're slowly rebuilding our relationship on a healthier foundation. I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. The loan will take years to pay off and we have a lot of emotional healing to do as a family, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're on the right path. I've learned a lot about forgiveness and setting boundaries. I'm learning to stand up for myself while still being compassionate. It's a delicate balance, but I'm getting better at it every day. To those who supported me in my original post, thank you. Your advice and kind words helped me through a really tough time. To those in similar situations, I'd say this. It's okay to protect yourself and your future, but also be open to the possibility of reconciliation if the circumstances are right. As for Aubrey, I have mixed feelings. Part of me is angry at her for what she did to our parents, but mostly I feel sorry for her. She's lost her family and will have to live with the consequences of her actions. I hope she gets help and turns her life around someday. For now, I'm focusing on my studies, my job, my relationship with Sam, and rebuilding my family relationships. It's not easy, but I'm hopeful for what the future holds. Thank you all for your support and advice throughout this journey. It's been a wild ride, but I think I'm finally on stable ground. Now on to the next story. Story 4. I'm an 18-year-old guy and I've got this younger brother who's technically my cousin. His mom, my aunt, had some serious issues with addiction, so she couldn't take care of him. Because of that, my family stepped in right when he was born and we adopted him. He's been with us ever since. Unfortunately, because of the rough start he had, he faces a lot of challenges, especially with learning. His abilities in things like math and reading are really behind. He's kind of on the level of someone much younger than him, almost half his age. Despite trying out many different things like summer school every year and some other programs that were supposed to help, we haven't seen much improvement. I've never really gotten involved in helping him with his school stuff. I guess it feels like he was just placed into my life without me having a say, and I've kept my distance. I'm also looking forward to moving out and starting my own life soon. But recently there's been a new development. My parents came across a special tutoring program that's designed for kids who have learning disabilities, and they're really hopeful it could be what he needs to catch up. However, there's a big problem with this plan. My dad was laid off from his job because of all the economic problems happening around the world right now, and that's hit our family finances pretty hard. At the moment, it's just my older sister and me who are working and bringing in any money. So with money being tight, it's tough for my parents to afford the special tutoring program, but they're really determined to try because they see how much my brother is struggling. Just this week, they sat us all down and laid it all out. They were pretty upfront about the situation. My brother is at a real risk of being held back a grade if he doesn't get some effective help soon, and since they're out of work right now, they're kind of looking to us, his older siblings, to step up and help make this tutoring thing happen for him. It's a lot to think about, especially with our own stuff going on, but it's clear he really needs this help. When my parents brought up that my sister and I should help pay for my brother's tutoring, we both immediately pushed back. My sister argued that they didn't have the right to demand this from us, and I pointed out that it wasn't my job to take care of him. Despite our protests, my parents insisted that we needed to stick together because we're a family and families support each other. The thing is, they also have access to my bank account since it's a joint account, which means they can pull money out without even telling me. This worried me because I wouldn't be able to do anything about it if they decided to take my hard-earned money. So to protect my savings, I quickly opened a new account at a different bank and set up a wire transfer to move my money there. The transfer completed today, and when my parents got a notification about it, they were not happy at all. They confronted me about it, saying that I should be willing to contribute to my brother's needs. They even yelled, trying to make me feel guilty about not stepping up for him after all the efforts they've made to help him succeed. This made me feel pretty bad. I definitely don't want my brother to struggle, but at the same time, I feel like it's not fair for them to just take my money. I'm stuck feeling torn. I want to do right by my brother, but I also need to protect my own financial future. Now for some comments. Not the idiot. If your parents want to help them, then they should stop talking and start working. You have every right to protect your money and your future. Right? If OP and his sister both found jobs at a high school with no training, Mom and Dad could get their asses out and pound the pavement so they find something. But given their level of entitlement, I'm guessing they think minimum wage jobs are beneath them. Hey, since Dad got laid off and now has free time, maybe he could tutor the kid himself instead of resorting to theft. As soon as you said it's your money and you're 18, nope, never the idiot. You are not a parent and paying for tutoring etc. is a parent thing, and it sounds like they didn't ask but told you that you were giving them the money. You are the idiot. Your brother isn't your or your sister's responsibility, and you have every right to take agency of your own bank account and money. Still, if you and your sister are both adults and earning your own money while living costs-free at your parents', they have every right to kick you out and rent those rooms for profit to pay for your brother's tuition. I'm guessing they haven't done that because you're family. I'm gonna have to disagree here. The parents made a choice to adopt, and it doesn't work that way. Sure, they can kick them out, but good luck renting out rooms in a shared house with a young child that more often than not doesn't know how to behave. Most would pass up that offer. Their parents want them to finance their style of living and their brother's schooling because neither of their parents work, so it's not a one-time thing while they get back on their feet. OP, if you're in the US, your brother is probably entitled to additional help at no cost through the school system, even need an IEP or 504 due to his medical disability. The school would then help set up appropriate support and accommodations. If parents have actually gotten him a diagnosis, he's probably eligible for additional support services and funds through the state. Traditional tutoring may not help your brother. He needs specialized education based on his disability. Yes, not the idiot at all. Your parents are trying to do what's called forced parentification. Your brother is not your responsibility to raise or help raise in any way. You did the correct thing in separating your finances from that account. Make sure your direct deposit goes into your new account. I would also recommend you and your sister move out as soon as possible and limit contact with your parents. Otherwise, they will try to manipulate the money out of you. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Hi there. I'm a 34-year-old guy, and I'm lucky enough to be the dad of a great tween girl we call Susan. She's just the best, smart, funny, and usually full of energy. When I first met her mom, one of my priorities was to get to know Susan because her biological dad isn't part of her life and doesn't plan to be. It was really important to me that Susan felt I was there for her, not just because I loved her mom, but because I wanted to be her dad too. So on the day I married her mom, I surprised Susan by officially adopting her. I wanted her to know without a doubt that I was her dad now and she was my daughter. Susan is typically a bundle of energy, always doing something active. But things have changed a bit since everyone's daily routine got shaken up by global events and now the summer break. I've noticed a big shift in her habits. She's spending a lot of time just sitting on the couch. Her days often involve marathon sessions of TV shows, long hours with video games, and snacking much more than usual. I could see she was starting to gain quite a bit of weight, which seemed to coincide with her new, less active lifestyle. I mentioned this to my wife, thinking we could find fun ways to encourage more activity for Susan together. However, my wife felt differently. She said Susan was just fine and reminded me it was summer, after all. Kids are supposed to relax and enjoy themselves, including watching TV and indulging in their favorite snacks. I get that, really I do. Summer is a break and it's normal to unwind, but something in my gut told me that if Susan slipped into these habits too deeply, it might not be good for her in the long run. So I decided to introduce a new routine just for the two of us. It began with simple walks each day. We talk about random things, how our days were going, what was new, and anything else under the sun. It was our special time to reconnect. Gradually, I started increasing the pace of these walks, turning them into light jogs and eventually into runs. It was a bit tough for Susan at first. She definitely struggled to keep up, but as days turned into weeks, she got the hang of it and could comfortably run alongside me. I was thrilled because not only was she getting some good exercise, but it was also a fantastic way for us to spend quality time together. However, not everyone was as pleased as I was. My wife was really upset. She felt I was being too harsh on Susan, suggesting that I was fat-shaming her by making her exercise. According to her, kids should be free to watch TV and eat whatever they want, especially during their holiday time. She began to counteract my efforts by buying tons of Susan's favorite snacks and encouraging her to stay in and binge-watch her favorite shows. She told Susan directly that she didn't have to join me for runs if she didn't want to. My wife accused me of trying to impose my lifestyle choices on Susan and said it seemed like I was embarrassed by our daughter's appearance. That hurt because my intention was really just about keeping Susan healthy and active, not about her looks. The tension escalated to several arguments, and the atmosphere at home grew quite strained. The situation got so intense that my wife even suggested that perhaps Susan should spend the rest of the summer with her grandparents. This whole thing has become a big family issue. I truly believe staying active is important, especially now when everything else in life is so unpredictable. I thought I was doing the right thing by helping Susan find a balance, but it's turned into a significant disagreement within our family. I'm just trying to do my best here as a dad, trying to look out for my daughter's well-being, while also respecting my wife's perspective. It's a tricky situation, and I'm searching for the right path forward. Am I the idiot? Now for some comments before the update. Not the idiot. How is you going for a run pushing lifestyle habits on her? But mom buying her junk food isn't. You didn't fat shame her, you created an activity for both of you to do together, and unless you left significant facts out, she likes it. So yeah, unless she had to be coaxed into running with you and hates it, you are not wrong. A healthy, active lifestyle is the best thing to push on your kid. Your wife kind of sucks here. Intentionally stocking the house with unhealthy food is a really crappy thing to do to a child. The kid should at least have the choice of healthy foods around. You kind of suck too for making this about weight loss and looking a certain way rather than just saying your daughter should build healthy habits. Making her run seems a bit much, especially if she doesn't like it. Walking and having a conversation about the day honestly seems like a better way for your daughter to learn that exercise isn't about punishing yourself for the food you eat. So my vote is everyone's the idiot here. Encouraging a child to eat junk food and binge watch TV is abuse. There, I said it. Of course, eating junk food and watching TV can be a great part of childhood, but it's not behavior that should be encouraged. Being active and running around is an essential part of a healthy childhood. Unfortunately, your wife is setting your daughter up for lifelong health issues. Update. Am I the idiot for trying to help my daughter lose weight? First of all, I want to thank everyone for their support. I hope you all took that walk. Anyway, we did end up sending Susan to her grandparents, but only for 2 weeks. During that time, my wife and I got to really talk and air out our feelings. My wife told me that as a child, she was very large. She was nearly morbidly obese by the time she was a teen, and her parents gave her a terrible time about this. Forced her to diet, would lock her out of the house to force her to exercise, tell her PE teacher to make her run extra laps, and locked up food so she couldn't eat it. Something she doesn't like to talk about. I had no idea this had happened to her. She was in tears and explained that she thought I might do the same things to Susan. I know my wife is big, but it never bothered me. I married her because I love her. She's a wonderful wife and mother, but like all of us, she just let her insecurities get the better of her. This is why she freaked out when I started getting Susan to go running with me. Anyway, after our talk, we agreed that we can do all of this as a family. I bought some bikes for us, downloaded family exercise videos. Family mealtime, healthy shopping together. So now she's joining us on our runs. Don't worry, Susan and I slow it down to a jog so she can keep up. I just wish she had opened up sooner about this. At least it's out in the open now. A lot of people said I sounded like the perfect dad for what I did with Susan. I'm not perfect. I just know what it's like to not have a father. My dad decided when I was 2 that he didn't want to be a dad anymore. He packed up and left in the middle of the night, leaving just me and Mom. Never heard from him again. He didn't call, write, or even send child support. I have no idea where he is now, and I don't care to know. My mom worked 2 jobs to support us. We moved 6 times and it was tough. I had plenty of men in my life as role models, but I didn't have a dad. At the end of the day, I told myself that if I got to be a dad, I would be the dad I would want, be the dad I wish my dad had been to me. I see a lot of myself in Susan. That's why I want her to know that no matter what, I love her. That's why I adopted her. That is why I don't call her my stepdaughter, because she's my daughter. She is my little girl, and I want her to know that she is always loved and could come to me about anything. Kids have it hard enough these days. I want her to know that we can go for a walk when things get hard and just talk about it. Now for some comments. I thought this had something to do with your wife's past. Her parents were cruel to her. I really think therapy would be a big help for her. You keep doing what you do, being an amazing dad and husband. Great update, and I get your wife's reaction. Growing up, my mother wasn't as bad as your wife's parents, but literally almost every day my weight was the topic. I was told to go ride my bike, get out of the house, pretty much constantly reinforced that something was wrong with me. As I got older, it was always the first thing she'd mention. Either I looked like I lost a few pounds or I needed to be careful because I had clearly gained. Without fail, always a topic of conversation. Just remind yourself to be sensitive to never come across this way. Your intentions are good, you're going about it fantastically and lovingly. Just be conscious to always put family time as a priority over the exercise. You are awesome. Thank you for being a good dad. From someone who faced emotional and psychological mistreatment from a narcissistic father and had no protection from a weak, dependent mother, I am 44 female and still struggle. And when I hear from dads like you, it makes me cry for my inner child and the little me I was and how my parents' behavior affected my life. Dads are so important for little girls and boys, and it sounds like you're the type of father many women did not have. Just do what you're doing as a father and husband. You are doing great. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I'm a 42-year-old guy, and I'm super excited because I recently got engaged to my girlfriend, who's 33. We've been dating for just over 3 years now. I popped the question last month, and she said yes. Since then, our lives have been a whirlwind of wedding planning. We've been picking out venues, tasting cakes, and looking at countless decorations. It's been hectic but really fun. So last night, we were winding down after another long session of wedding planning. We'd been discussing everything from guest lists to music choices. As we were about to call it a night, my fiancée turned to me and asked a question that caught me completely off guard. She wanted to know if I'd be okay with her being a stay-at-home wife once we were married. At first, I thought she was just kidding. The idea seemed so out of the blue. I laughed a bit because it just didn't fit with the image I had of us as a power couple, both thriving in our careers. But when I looked at her face, I realized she wasn't joking. She was serious, and she even told me to stop laughing. She really wanted to discuss this. Curious, I asked her why she was considering this change. We both have decent jobs that not only pay well but also offer us a lot of satisfaction and stability. Her response surprised me. She mentioned that yes, while we both earn good money, I do make about 40% more than she does. She felt that we could adjust our spending habits a bit so she wouldn't need to work. She shared that she had been thinking about it a lot lately. The whole 9 to 5 routine was wearing on her, and she felt like it wasn't the right fit anymore. I asked her to confirm if she was really serious about this idea, and she was adamant. This was something she was considering deeply. I expressed that I was not comfortable with this arrangement. Trying to find some middle ground, I suggested that perhaps she could consider staying at home if we decided to have kids in the future, but I was quick to clarify that I wasn't keen on the idea of her being a stay-at-home wife if it was just the two of us. I felt that it would create an imbalance in our relationship that I wasn't prepared for. She didn't take this well and accused me of being manipulative, highlighting that we had agreed to remain child-free. So bringing up kids was just a way for me to dodge her request. This misunderstanding escalated into a heated argument. She insisted that as her partner, I should support her dreams. Yet when I asked her what she planned to do with her time at home, whether she had any projects in mind, she didn't provide a clear answer. It seemed she hadn't thought that part through, or if she had, she wasn't ready to share it with me. Caught up in the frustration of the moment, I ended up asking her if her dream was simply to avoid work, to be lazy. That was probably too harsh, but emotions were running high, and I was struggling to understand her perspective without any concrete plans or aspirations she could share. Understandably, this upset her a lot. She decided she needed some space to think things over and went to stay at her mother's house. Before she left, she said we could continue this discussion once I'd calmed down a bit. Reflecting on everything now, I realized how important it is for me that both partners contribute equally to our life together, not just financially but also in making our daily life vibrant and full of purpose. I love her dearly, but I believe a partnership should be about both people supporting each other and pulling together. I'm not comfortable with the idea of taking on the financial burden alone, while also feeling like my partner isn't engaging in something meaningful for herself. It's a tough spot, and I'm hoping we can find a way to understand each other's views and come to a compromise that respects both our dreams. Am I the idiot? Now for some comments. Not the idiot. Being a stay-at-home mom is a job, assuming that said mother is doing the childcare and not leaving all of the work to a team of nannies and housekeepers. Being a stay-at-home wife with no plans for childcare is not on the same level. If it's something you both agree on, then that's one thing, but you've made it clear that you're looking for a partner, not a sugar baby. Not the idiot. What you said may have been a bit cruel. Just because she will be home doesn't necessarily mean it's her dream to be lazy. However, I don't think you were too far off base. You asked her what she would do with her free time, and it doesn't seem like she had an answer for you. She claims that it is her dream, but she doesn't clarify what the dream is. Without any clear-cut goals for what she would want to do, I think your concerns are more valid. You do not want to be the only source of income, and I think that's perfectly reasonable. I'll support her dreams. If my husband had a dream to go back to college, I would support that. If he had a dream to start his own business in an area he was passionate about, I would support that. If he had a dream to sit on his butt and play video games, be a stay-at-home husband, he would soon be supporting my dream to be divorced. It sounds like you and your fiancé have very different values in life. You are not the idiot. She's being manipulative, bordering on gaslighting, for claiming that you were the one being manipulative for not wanting to completely support her dreams. What kind of bullcrap is that? She wasn't born a trust fund baby or a member of the landed gentry, so I don't know where this expectation that she'll find someone to support her originates. Was her mother a stay-at-home wife or mom? Oh, and don't forget, she's gone to her mother's now. I'm afraid that she may not be the one and that this relationship may very well be over. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Roommate from Hell. My roommate stole my stuff and framed me until I caught her red-handed and got her suspended. I'm 17, female, a high school student. I moved to California 7 months ago for further studies. It was hard to convince my parents, but in the end, they surrendered on one condition: that I stay at a hostel in a school of their choice. I was on cloud 9 when I saw my school. I had heard about this school from a common friend, and according to her, it was one of the best schools in California. I got a nice, spacious room in the hostel. The first day away from my parents was hard to spend, but soon I started enjoying my freedom. Now I could do whatever I wanted. I had no one to scold me for staying awake till midnight or having my favorite snacks in my bed. It was like a dream, and that is why I'm here today, filling you in on my situation, which never in my life had I thought I would be facing, and who turned my life into a living hell. Mancy F., my roommate. She is the kind of girl no one would ever want to live with or even have a friendship with. She is such a bossy person and always orders people around her. She thinks that everyone should obey her, and we are all her servants. I don't know what I did to deserve her. I still remember how she was yelling at her mother when she entered the hostel because she didn't want to live there. I immediately felt bad for her parents. I won't say I didn't try to build a good relationship with her since the very first day she entered my life. I remember only one thing. How she tried her level best to put me down instead of building a healthy roommate relationship. I remember how I tried to talk to her when we were having dinner at the dining table with other girls. But she didn't look interested at all, rolled her eyes, and left her seat. The next day, when I was watching something on my phone patiently, she threw my blanket off my bed because she couldn't find her notebook. When I tried to help her, she pushed me back instead and called me clingy. Sometimes I think she has some multiple personality disorder because later she apologized for her behavior, but her behavior hasn't changed at all. She still sometimes makes a big fuss about little things. She is just getting on my nerves. The only time I'm calm and relaxed is when I'm with Melissa F., my only best friend here. She listens to my non-stop complaints about my roommate and supports me. We spend most of our time in the cafeteria and sometimes in her room. We avoid spending time in our room because of my terrible roommate. Once Melissa came to my room, and Mancy fought with her because she was sitting on her chair, which she misunderstood as mine. Mancy insulted her and said really bad things to her. Since then, I don't invite her to my room anymore. The main matter of concern for me now is that she is using her knowledge of my likings and dislikes for her own benefit. For instance, she purposely wears perfumes of woody and strong scents because she knows I'm allergic to them. Sometimes she would yell at me in front of everyone at school, especially in front of Jack, because she knew I liked him. She read my diary. She always troubles me by doing these things, always poking around in my life. Luckily, we didn't study in the same section. Otherwise, it would have been worse. Mancy is not just an arrogant girl, but also a bully. Last week, she tortured a poor little girl. We were walking past the cafeteria, and there was a girl sitting on a chair with some students consoling her and trying to make her stop crying. Her clothes were all dirty with ink on them. It looked like somebody had poured ink on her, and that somebody was none other than Mancy. I couldn't help but ask her about it. When the girl was done sobbing, she told us that my evil roommate had ordered her to bring a burger for her. Maybe the girl was a junior, which made Mancy see her as easy prey. When the girl refused to do anything for my roommate, she lost her temper and sprayed ink on the innocent girl. Except for a few boys, there was no one in the cafeteria, and those boys were busy playing video games, so they didn't notice anything. My roommate then abused her and left the cafeteria. We decided to complain about this to the principal, but when we reached the office, we saw my roommate sitting outside the office. One of our teachers in first aid was also there. Mancy had bruises on her right arm and was crying. We were all in deep shock. No one had ever thought that she could even hurt herself by playing the victim. We all knew her as an arrogant bully, but this was our first time seeing her as a cunning person. I knew that it would be a waste of time to go to the principal, but Melissa insisted, and I was right. My clever roommate was able to convince the principal that it wasn't her who started the fight. After all, she had strong evidence, her injury. She even told the principal that we girls bully her and make fun of her. We all felt so helpless. It is Mancy who bullies people, yells at them, makes them do her assignments, and tortures her roommate. What surprised me the most was that when my roommate came back to our room with 2 of her bootlickers, she seemed all fine and was laughing her heart out, as if nothing had happened. It made me so frustrated to see her. I couldn't bear her voice, let alone her laugh. She looks at me with a wicked smile on her face whenever she talks to me. I know that she wants me to know that she is the real boss here, and no one can beat her. What is more frustrating is that I'm not as lucky as others, because they can at least stay peaceful in their room, not unlike me who has to deal with her nuisance even after school. I'm hoping to stay away from her as much as possible and stay in Melissa's room more to avoid any useless argument with her. But I don't think things are going to be any better after all that she has done at school. Date 1. Every day with Mancy is getting worse. Now I know I haven't been keeping you guys updated about my turbulent life. It's because the last few days were really tough for me to cope with. Every day, new drama is happening in my life, all because of my evil roommate. If all those were not enough, Mancy was made the head girl of the school. I don't know what magic she had done on the teachers that she was made one. Yeah, she is the captain of the basketball team and vice captain of the soccer team, but she is quite dumb in studies. There are other girls who are smarter, more intelligent, and more disciplined than her. For instance, me. I have been participating in most of the curriculum, and I'm good at my studies too. Mancy's tortures knew no bounds. After becoming the head girl, she insulted many girls, including Melissa, for wearing lipstick to school, even when Mancy herself wore makeup, but she rubbed it off before the assembly, and we all knew that she was going to get her makeup done again. Her bossy behavior has been at its peak lately. Next Saturday, our school is hosting an annual function. I have given my name as a contestant because I thought it would be a good opportunity to show off my paintings, but yesterday I got to know that my name was removed from the list. I know Mancy did this because the girls who are handling the lists of contestants are Mancy's minions. She not only got my name removed, but also all the names of other students who she dislikes for all the activities. She chose only her friends and those who tolerated her bossy behavior. When I asked her why she did that, she laughed and called me an attention seeker. She literally questioned my worth and told me that I was not a deserving contestant, which is why she removed my name from the list, according to my dominating roommate. Nobody would want to see my paintings. Melissa suggested that I participate in dance because she and her boyfriend were also participating in it. When I reached out to Mancy for nominations, she said I can apply for dance, but for that I must have a partner with me. Melissa suggested that I should ask Jack to be my partner. Melissa overheard it, and before I could ask him anything, she asked Jack to dance with her for the annual function. Jack is a little introverted, and he has asked Mancy for some time to think about it. I'm still hoping that he will reject her proposal because I have noticed him staring at me multiple times. I'm getting chills just at the thought of seeing both of them dancing. Update 2. I was hoping that Jack would reject Mancy's request, as I mentioned in my last update, but it turned out into something else. Actually, Mancy didn't ask him for it. She told him that it is the teachers who have decided the pairs, and that is why Jack has to accept the request. Seeing both of them dancing kills me. She gives me a sneer every time they are dancing. I have tolerated her enough. I feel helpless because I know that I can't do anything about this. 3 days ago, when I was studying and Mancy was getting ready to go to Jack's place for dance rehearsal, she asked me to pass her lip gloss. I knew she wanted to make me jealous, but I did not want to show her that it was her victory. They were just a dance couple and nothing more than that, so I passed the lip gloss to her and started asking her about how her dance rehearsal was going, etc. She was speaking with much enthusiasm in her voice, although it was killing me from the inside. I showed no reaction on my face. I was just smiling. When she left, I kept thinking about what they would do. What if Jack started liking her? This thought was actually killing me from the inside. I believe I have lost Jack before actually having him. My terrible roommate stole him from me. Speaking of stealing, I want to tell you guys something else. This is something that is bothering me a lot. My belongings are disappearing. I don't know where. First, it was my super expensive handbag that I purchased after saving money for almost 8 months. At first, I thought I must have kept it in Melissa's room, as I took it there to show her, but after checking her room, it wasn't there. I reported this to the warden but haven't received any fruitful results yet. It started with my bag, but soon a number of my other things also started disappearing, including my clothes and makeup. Of course, I suspect Mancy of stealing my belongings because no one else comes to our room other than Mancy and her minions. Not just me. I have heard that a lot of other girls at our hostel are losing their stuff. I don't know about others, but for my things, I suspect Mancy. Update 3. It was Mancy. My gut feeling was bang on target. It was Mancy who was stealing my stuff. And remember how Jack and Mancy used to go for rehearsals in the evening, and I used to cry in my bed for hours? One such evening, after she left the room, I found her wardrobe key lying under the bed. I guess it slipped while she was stuffing it inside her bag. She barely forgets it, but today she was so busy making me jealous that nothing else mattered to her at all, so she forgot to take her keys with her. That stealing thing came to mind and I got curious. I knew that it wasn't the right thing to do, but my curiosity was at its peak. So much so that I couldn't stop myself. I opened her wardrobe. It was the messiest wardrobe I had seen in my entire life. Her clothes were stinking. They were dirty, but that's not what I was interested in. After digging through her dirty clothes, I found my missing bag, some of my missing clothes, and some of my makeup items. So Mancy was indeed a thief, apart from all her titles of being a bully and arrogant girl. But trust me, I wasn't shocked at all because deep down in my heart I knew that it was her. I was thinking about why on earth she was chosen to be my roommate and how low she could stoop. I searched every other place but didn't find anything else. Then I locked her wardrobe, threw the key on the bed, and left it as it was. I called Melissa and told her how Mancy had crossed all the limits. I wanted to expose Mancy, but we could not think of any idea. If we showed Mancy's wardrobe to the warden, she would just say that I had planted those stolen items there and was framing her. Melissa suggested that I just take out my stuff from her wardrobe before she comes back, and later we would figure out the revenge. My bag and the makeup items were so expensive, I just couldn't afford to lose it. I pulled it back secretly. I wanted to leave the school at that moment. I really wanted to run from the hostel, but where could I go? I don't know anyone here. Melissa said that we would figure out something, and for that moment I have to just calm myself down. I was broken completely and didn't know what to do. I was thinking about my hometown and wanted to go back. All these were keeping me so stressed that I was not able to focus on my studies. Looking at my depression, Melissa forced me to talk to the warden about the incident. She wanted me to complain to the warden about Mancy. I wasn't the only person who hated her. Everyone in the school except her crawlers wanted her to leave the school. We both knew that many students had complained about Mancy's behavior, but every time she defended herself, stating that she was the head girl of the school and students didn't like her, so they made false allegations against her. I knew nothing would happen to her, and she would get away with her evilness, so I didn't complain to the warden about it. I want to expose her true colors to the teachers, but I'm just not able to come up with any plan. Date for, you know what? Mancy is finally out of my room, and I couldn't be happier. That day I discovered my items in her wardrobe, and I took them out from there. Mancy didn't realize that I had taken them back. 2 days passed, but she didn't say anything about it. Probably she was too busy rehearsing her dance moves with Jack. Melissa and I came up with a plan to trigger Mancy and then secretly record her obnoxious behavior. So on the third day, I placed my phone on the bookshelf, hiding it between the books opposite Mancy's wardrobe. Melissa was with me in the room when Mancy entered. She immediately got infuriated that Melissa was sitting on her bed. Melissa apologized, but Mancy went full-blown on her, so the bully part of her was captured. Next was about her theft. I pulled out the bag from my wardrobe and all those missing tops that I found from Mancy's wardrobe the other day and showed them to Melissa. I was like, see what I found? When Melissa asked me where I found that missing stuff, I simply looked at Mancy. Mancy's face turned pale, and she started abusing me. She started yelling that how could I call her a thief and all that. I said because she was a thief and stole others' belongings. She kept abusing me, but I didn't back out. Mancy lost her mind and opened her wardrobe and started throwing all the stolen items and dared me that I couldn't do anything about it. She was like, yeah, I have all these clothes and makeup of you poor chicks, and what are you going to do about me? She mocked me and triggered me. Do you want to complain? Do you want to complain? Go ahead and complain. You chicks cannot do anything. Remember who's the boss here? She became so aggressive that at one point in time her face was almost touching my nose. Melissa had opened her Instagram Live when Mancy was throwing all the stolen items on my face and was charging at me. When Mancy realized that she was being recorded, she tried to snatch the phone from Melissa, and their scuffle also went live. Melissa stopped the recording, but by then the damage was already done. Besides, we had the full video of the incident getting recorded through my phone. Mancy was still shouting and cursing us when her phone started buzzing. Her friends were calling to tell her that she was caught on Instagram Live and that so many had seen it. Melissa went out to call the warden because we knew Mancy was not going to spare us. We were right. Mancy became monstrous and hurled such abuses and assaults on me that I could have never imagined. By then, Melissa arrived with the warden. I took my phone from the bookshelf and showed the full recordings to the warden. Mancy was so infuriated that I had recorded her all these while that she tried to snatch the phone from the warden's hand. The warden rebuked her and put her in place. I told the warden that I was going to involve my parents and the police if required if she didn't take any action. I played the same dirty game of playing the victim in front of the warden. I was crying and insisted that I would directly show this to the principal if she didn't report Mancy. The warden took all three of us with her to the principal's office. I kept crying the whole time. I'm sure Mancy would have also used her tears to get away with her wrongdoings, but this time she was caught big time, and she could no longer use tears to fake it. The principal saw the video and called both of our parents on the next day, and he instructed the warden to change the room for Mancy. Mancy yelled in front of the principal that she was not going to move to another room because her friends lived in the adjacent rooms, so I requested that my room be changed. I can live anywhere except with that wicked girl. The warden changed my room but also scolded Mancy for her behavior. There was a lot of drama, and it would take forever for me to write all those in detail, so in brief, the warden went back to Mancy's room and checked her wardrobe. She found a lot of missing items reported by the other girls. I was packing my belongings when all this happened. You won't believe what happened next. When my parents met with the principal and saw the video, they blamed the management and the warden for not taking care of the children's safety. My dad was like, he was going to call the police right away, but the principal somehow stopped it. Meanwhile, Mancy's parents didn't take her side and stood quiet. This angered Mancy, and she started yelling at her mother in front of everyone that they were not taking her side like my parents were taking mine. She only got silent when the principal threatened to suspend her from the school. Her father at last spoke that Mancy was a sports person, so it is natural for her to be a little aggressive, and she brings the aggression of the field into the house. The warden asked them to seek counseling for her because it is not healthy or natural to torture others. She was indeed a bully and nothing else. The principal asked Mancy's parents to take her home for a few days until he handled the other matters. The principal told me and Melissa that we shouldn't have posted on Instagram and that I should complain to the authorities. I told him that no actions had been taken on Mancy earlier, so I didn't complain and instead chose this route. He didn't say anything further, but we were also not applauded for our bravery. The principal and the warden were concerned that it would damage the reputation of the school and the dorm, so they held me and Melissa equally responsible for damaging the reputation, although they didn't tell us anything. Mancy is going through her suspension period. It is still not sure if she will continue to be the head girl or not. The annual function is also next week. Jack has also moved out from the dance program because Mancy is not there. Melissa asked me to join Jack as the partner, but I don't want to make a fool of myself by going to the stage without sufficient practice. 90% of the rehearsals are over, so I don't intend to join midway. I don't know what is going to happen when Mancy returns from her suspension period. I'm definitely not hoping that she will mend her ways. She is definitely going to hunt me down, but this time I'm prepared for this. The best part is I don't have to see her face day and night. We'll update if anything develops. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Stepmom repeatedly lied and refused to take me and my sister home until my mom threatened to call the cops. This happened in 2009 when I was 15 and my sister was 11. I honestly don't remember it well. I had to call my mother to fill me in on some details, and it helped a little. My parents got divorced when I was 10. My mother got primary custody, but we stayed with my father for about 3 days a week, sometimes more. They took turns celebrating the holidays with us. We'd spend them with one parent in 1 year and with the other one the next. In March 2009, my father and his then-girlfriend, Molly, broke up after he confessed to cheating with the woman that eventually became SM years later. I found out that affair had been going on for almost 2 years by the time he told Molly. He introduced SM to us in May, on my birthday actually, and they almost immediately announced their engagement. From that moment, she started trying to force us all to be a happy blended family, which usually meant forcing us to do everything she, or sometimes my stepbrother, wanted and pretending my mom wasn't in the picture. SM and my dad started pushing for her to leave us with them a lot more often than my parents had previously agreed, but she thankfully wouldn't budge. We started getting ready for the holidays in November and SM started talking about a ski resort hotel. I don't know, it was 14 years ago, that she wanted to visit with us. It was a 3-hour car drive from where we lived and was clearly more suited for couples, younger children, or the elderly. Neither me nor my sister actually wanted to go. But before we could say that, SM asked us when we'd be done with school so that she could book it for a 2-week trip during our winter break. I was happy to be the one to break it to her. We'd spent Christmas and New Year's Day with my father and Molly the year before, so it was my mom's turn to have us. My father and SM called my mother dozens of times to try to convince her to let them take us, insisting that SM was excited to spend Christmas with us and that the previous year's holidays didn't count because we'd spent them with Molly. My mom said no, as she'd already made plans, and the subject was dropped for a few weeks. Then, on our last day of school before winter break, SM picked me and my sister up from our schools. That was fine. We were supposed to spend a couple of days with my father before the holidays. What wasn't fine was that the moment we got into her car, SM said, "We're going to the ski resort." Surprise. She proceeded to tell us that they'd already packed our bags for us, and Dad would meet us there. I asked if my mom knew about this, and she said sure, but I knew that was a lie. I also didn't believe her when she said we'd only be there for a couple of days and would be back before Christmas. I figured they booked the 2-week stay they wanted and would probably guilt trip us both into staying once their couple of days were up. I was terrified. I didn't have a phone. My mom thought I was still too young to have one. Didn't trust SM, and I could see my sister was even more scared. I told SM we didn't want to go. She said, "Fine, let's just pick stepbrother up from school." We picked him up from school. Sem said, "Okay, now let's go to the resort." I said again that we didn't want to go. She said, "Fine, let's just find a gas station and fill up." That pattern repeated itself about 6 times over the next hour. Every time I said we didn't want to go, SM would make up an excuse and pretend to forget my plea. As we were about to leave town, my dad called SM. I heard them fight for a few minutes about something, and then she hung up. Stepbrother asked her what happened, but she didn't answer. Then she said, "I'm taking you kids to your mom's." She turned the car around and took us home. When we got there, my mom pulled us out of the car and screamed at SM to leave, which she did. My mom was hugging us and bawling as if she hadn't seen us in years. She didn't tell me the full story until a few days later. Basically, my mom called my dad in a panic because he'd never told her we'd gotten home, which he always did whenever he picked us up from school. He was hoping she wouldn't call until we were already at the resort. My father knew that lying would do more harm than good, so he told her their plans. He tried to spin it around as something my sister wanted, but my mother didn't buy it. She told him that if SM didn't take us back to her place, she'd call the police. My father and SM took my stepbrother to the resort for a few days after. They bragged about all the fun they had and all the things me and my sister had missed. Stepbrother later confided in me that he actually hated it. He barely saw his mom while they were there, and he spent Christmas mostly alone in their room. SM called us both selfish for trying to ruin their holidays. My sister actually felt guilty for a while, and I had to reassure her. My mom didn't call the cops or press charges at the time. She didn't know if what SM did would qualify as a crime or if they'd actually help. She also feared that would ruin our relationship with my father, with whom she was still trying to stay on amicable terms. Years later, she told me she regretted not calling anyone. And that's the story of how I got my first phone. For some reason, I really hate this story so much that I avoid talking about it. This text was actually on my drafts for almost a week. It's far from the worst thing SM has ever done, but it still pisses me off. I admit that writing it all down did help a little though. What an IT bag. And your dad wasn't any better. How's your relationship with them now? Now on to the next story. Story 9. I've got this cute little corgi named Lila. She's a happy, healthy pup who normally loves her regular dog food. I usually buy a massive 50-pound bag of it that costs around $140, but I managed to get it for a bit cheaper because I buy it from the same place where Lila gets groomed. This giant bag is supposed to last about a month, which is perfect for us. Now, I recently had to head out to Dubai for a business trip. It was originally planned for just a week, but then a huge storm rolled in, causing a bunch of flight delays and cancellations. Because of all this chaos, I ended up being stuck there for an extra 3 days. Before I left, I set up my boyfriend with all the essentials for Lila, including her huge bag of food and some cash for emergencies, just in case something unexpected came up while I was gone. I imagined the emergency money might be needed if, let's say, Lila needed to see the vet urgently. We've got porcupines wandering around our yard sometimes, and they can be quite a menace. So it seemed reasonable to leave some money behind for something like a vet emergency. But here's where things got interesting. When I finally got home and settled back in, I noticed that Lila seemed a little heftier than usual. Nothing alarming, but her belly was definitely a bit plumper. Curious, I headed to the kitchen to check on her food situation. To my surprise, the big bag of food I'd left was completely untouched. Instead, there was a brand new, smaller 25 pounds bag of some high-end organic dog food that featured steak and chicken flavors, and guess what? It still had a $79.99 price tag dangling from it. It turns out my boyfriend had decided to use the emergency cash to buy this fancy dog food. He must have thought that the emergency I was talking about was Lila needing a better quality of food while I was away. I had to laugh because that was not what I had in mind for an emergency situation at all. But there it was, a pricey bag of gourmet dog food for Lila, bought with the emergency fund meant for real emergencies while I was stuck in Dubai. My boyfriend's mom decided to pay a visit, which isn't unusual by itself. However, this time she had quite the opinion about the dog food I've been using for Lila. She told my boyfriend that the food I've been buying, yes, that big $140 bag that lasts a month and is a financial stretch for me, was no good. She managed to convince him that Lila deserved something better, something fancier, hence the switch to that expensive $79.99 bag of organic steak and chicken dog food. But that's not all. She took it a step further by beginning to feed Lila actual meat, like cut-up steak chunks and chicken pieces, right in her bowl. Since I've been back, Lila has turned her nose up at the usual dog food she's eaten all her life. Now she's even started jumping up on the kitchen table, trying to snag some human food while I'm cooking. This is a bad habit that I had worked hard to break about 1.5 years ago, and now it's back. To say I was livid when I found out would be an understatement. Finances are tight for me. I've just been hit with a budget cut and a property tax increase of 99.8%. So when I saw my boyfriend's mom casually digging through her purse to pull out more steak bits for Lila right in my kitchen, I lost it. I've always been super clear about no table scraps for Lila, and the switch to this luxury dog food just felt like the last straw. I totally flipped out. Now everyone thinks I've lost my marbles, and they're calling me a crazy idiot, but from my perspective, these changes are not only unnecessary but are also impacting my carefully managed budget and undoing the discipline I had established with Lila. Now for some comments. Not the idiot. As someone who has a dog with significant food allergies, I would be absolutely livid. I drop hundreds on allergy treatments and I'm very cautious about what my dog eats. So if someone decided it wasn't good enough and changed it without asking, I'd be furious. In addition, letting a dog get away with things you said no to teaches them to push that boundary again. They literally ended your training that takes time and effort to build. So not okay. Not the idiot. If you get pregnant, your mother-in-law for sure oversteps boundaries with your child like she did with your dog. She seems very controlling and wants everything her way. She didn't even consider if the dog liked that food. She thought it was crappy. So the healthy dog needs something better, even if she's totally fine with this current food. Yeah, we don't see you have children with this mother-in-law. She's a special person. This is a future grandma that doesn't give a crap what mom wants for the kids, and a dad who will do whatever his mommy wants him to. Now on to the next story. Story 10. I find out that my husband is having an affair with my stepsister, but don't have enough proof, so I hire a PI to find out more. I, 28F, have a complicated family situation that I need some advice on. My parents divorced when I was 10, and my mom remarried when I was 14. This brought my stepsister, Bella, 29F, into my life. From the beginning, Bella and I didn't get along. We were complete opposites in many ways. I was more of a bookworm and focused on my studies, while Bella was outgoing and popular. She always seemed to hate me for getting good grades and praise from our parents for my academic achievements. I'll admit the one thing that always bothered me was that Bella was objectively more attractive than me. She had this effortless beauty that made people stop and stare. I felt plain in comparison, which didn't help our relationship. Throughout high school, Bella would often make comments about my appearance or social life. She'd say things like, "You're so lucky you're smart because you'll need it to make up for your looks," or she'd mock me for staying home to study on weekends instead of going to parties. When we both got into the same college, I thought maybe we'd grow closer as adults, but Bella just continued her pattern of subtle put-downs and trying to one-up me. If I got an A on a test, she'd brag about some guy asking her out. When I landed a good internship, she'd counter by talking about her modeling gigs. After college, we both moved back to our hometown. I started my career in marketing, while Bella pursued acting and modeling. We saw each other at family gatherings, but there was always tension. Bella would find ways to belittle my job or relationship status while playing up her glamorous lifestyle. 2 years ago, I married my husband, Will. He's kind, funny, and supportive. Everything I could want in a partner. When I introduced him to my family, I noticed Bella paying him extra attention. At first, I brushed it off as her being friendly, but over time, I started to feel uncomfortable with how Bella acted around Will. Whenever we visit my stepdad's house, she goes out of her way to flirt with him. She'll touch his arm while laughing at his jokes or find excuses to be alone with him. What bothers me most is that Will doesn't seem to mind the attention. He says Bella is just being friendly, but I can't shake the feeling that something more is going on. Last month, we went to a family barbecue at my stepdad's place. Bella showed up in a tiny bikini, even though it wasn't really warm enough for swimming. She spent the whole afternoon hanging around Will, giggling at everything he said. At one point, I went inside to use the bathroom. When I came out, I saw Bella and Will talking quietly by themselves in the hallway. They jumped apart when they saw me, which made me instantly suspicious. I confronted Bella later that day, asking her to back off and stop flirting with my husband. She got defensive and said I was being paranoid. She accused me of always being jealous of her and said it wasn't her fault if Will found her attractive. This led to a big argument where years of bitterness came out. I told Bella I was sick of her always trying to one-up me and steal attention. She fired back that I was pathetic for being threatened by her natural charm. Our parents got involved and tried to mediate, but it just made things worse. My mom sided with me while my stepdad defended Bella. It ended with Bella storming out and me leaving in tears. Since then, things have been tense in the family. Bella is playing the victim, telling everyone I attacked her out of jealousy. My stepdad thinks I overreacted and should apologize. Even my mom, while supportive, suggested I might be reading too much into things. Will insists nothing is going on between him and Bella. He says I'm letting my insecurities get the best of me, but I can't shake the feeling that something isn't right. I don't know what to do. Am I overreacting? Should I trust my gut feeling? Or am I letting old insecurities cloud my judgment? Part of me wonders if I'm the one for confronting Bella and causing this family drama. Maybe I am just being overly sensitive, but another part of me feels justified in standing up for my marriage and telling Bella to back off. I'm torn between wanting to keep the peace and feeling like I need to protect my relationship. I don't want to cut ties with my family, but I also don't want to subject myself to this stress every time we visit. The situation has been affecting my mental health and my relationship with Will. I find myself constantly worrying about what might be happening when I'm not around. I've started checking Will's phone when he's not looking, which I know is wrong, but I can't help myself. I've tried talking to Will about my concerns, but he gets frustrated and says I need to trust him. He thinks I'm making a big deal out of nothing and that my issues with Bella are clouding my judgment. Maybe he's right, but I can't shake this feeling of unease. I've thought about suggesting couples therapy, but I'm afraid Will might take it as an accusation. I don't want him to think I don't trust him, but at the same time, I feel like I need some outside help to navigate this situation. My friends are divided on the issue. Some think I'm justified in my concerns and that Bella's behavior is inappropriate. Others think I'm overreacting and that I should give Will and Bella the benefit of the doubt. It's hard to know who to listen to. I've also considered reaching out to Bella directly to try and clear the air. Maybe if we could have a calm, honest conversation, we could resolve some of our long-standing issues. But given how our last confrontation went, I'm not sure if that's a good idea. The whole situation has made me start questioning my worth. I've always felt inferior to Bella in terms of looks and social skills, and this situation is bringing all those insecurities to the surface. I find myself wondering if Will wishes he was with someone more like Bella, someone more outgoing and conventionally attractive. I know these thoughts aren't healthy, but I'm struggling to shake them. The constant stress and worry are taking a toll on me. I've been having trouble sleeping and concentrating at work. I feel like this situation is consuming my life. I've thought about suggesting to Will that we limit our visits to my stepdad's house, but I'm afraid that would only create more tension in the family. Plus, I don't want to punish my stepdad or make him feel like he has to choose sides. Part of me wonders if I should just try to ignore Bella's behavior and trust that Will wouldn't do anything to hurt me. But another part of me feels like that would be naive and potentially damaging to our marriage in the long run. I've also considered talking to my mom privately about the situation. She's always been supportive of me, and maybe she could offer some insight or advice. But I'm worried about putting her in an awkward position with my stepdad. At this point, I feel stuck. I don't want to be the cause of family drama, but I also don't want to ignore my feelings and let Bella's behavior continue unchecked. I'm worried that if I don't address this now, it will only get worse over time. I keep replaying past interactions in my mind, wondering if I missed any signs or if I'm blowing things out of proportion. Maybe Bella really is just naturally flirtatious and doesn't mean anything by it, or maybe she's deliberately trying to get under my skin because of our past issues. I've thought about seeking individual therapy to work through my insecurities and learn how to handle this situation better. But part of me feels like that would be admitting defeat, like I'm the one with the problem instead of Bella. So Reddit, I turn to you for advice. Am I the one for confronting my stepsister about her behavior with my husband? Should I apologize and try to smooth things over? Or should I stand my ground and insist on better boundaries? Update. It's been a month since my last post, and I never expected things to turn out this way. I want to thank everyone who offered advice and support. Your comments made me realize I needed to trust my instincts and take action. After my last post, I tried to give Will the benefit of the doubt. I wanted to believe him when he said nothing was going on between him and Bella, but the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. I found myself constantly on edge, watching their interactions and second-guessing everything. About 2 weeks ago, I hit a breaking point. Will had left his phone on the coffee table while he was in the shower. I know it was wrong, but I couldn't help myself. I picked up his phone and started going through it. At first, I didn't find anything suspicious in his messages or social media. I was about to put the phone down, feeling guilty for invading his privacy, when I decided to check his photo gallery. That's when I saw it. In the recently deleted folder, there was a photo of Will and Bella. They were in what looked like a hotel room, both partially undressed and in an intimate embrace. My heart stopped. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I quickly sent the photo to my own phone as evidence, then put Will's phone back where I found it. When he got out of the shower, I acted like everything was normal. I knew I needed more proof before confronting him. The next day, I contacted a private investigator. I felt terrible about going behind Will's back, but I needed to know the truth. The PI agreed to follow Bella and gather evidence of any meetings between her and Will for the next week. I lived in a state of constant anxiety. I went through the motions of daily life, pretending everything was fine, while my world was crumbling inside. Will noticed I was distant but assumed it was stress from work. After a week, the PI contacted me with their findings. They had photos and video evidence of Will and Bella meeting at a hotel on multiple occasions. There was no doubt about what was happening. The proof was undeniable. I spent a day crying and processing the information. Then I started planning my next steps. I contacted a divorce lawyer and began gathering all our financial information. I wanted to be prepared before confronting Will. Last weekend, I finally confronted Will with the evidence. I showed him the photo I found on his phone and the PI's report. At first, he tried to deny it, claiming the photo was old or that I was misunderstanding the situation. But when I showed him the dated photos and videos from the PI, he broke down. He admitted to having an affair with Bella for the past 6 months. He said it started as innocent flirting but quickly escalated. Will begged for forgiveness. He swore it was a mistake and that he would end things with Bella immediately. He promised to go to couples therapy and do whatever it took to save our marriage. But for me, the trust was irreparably broken. I told Will I wanted a divorce. He was shocked and tried to convince me to reconsider, but I stood firm. I had already contacted a lawyer and started the process. I asked Will to move out while we sorted things out legally. The next day, I called my mom and stepdad to tell them what happened. My mom was furious with Will and fully supported my decision. My stepdad was more conflicted. He expressed disappointment in Bella but also suggested I consider forgiveness and reconciliation. I then called Bella. She initially tried to deny everything, but when I told her I had proof, she broke down. She alternated between apologizing profusely and trying to justify her actions. She claimed she had always been in love with Will and couldn't help herself. I told Bella I never wanted to see or speak to her again. I made it clear that she was no longer welcome in my life and that I would not be attending any family events where she was present. She cried and begged for forgiveness, but I ended the call. Over the next few days, news of the affair and our impending divorce spread through the family. Reactions were mixed. Some family members fully supported me, while others urged me to reconsider and give Will another chance. My stepdad, in particular, has been pushing for reconciliation. He keeps saying that marriages can survive affairs and that divorce should be a last resort. I think he's also worried about how this will affect his relationship with Bella and the overall family dynamic. Even some of my friends have suggested that I'm being too hasty. They've said things like, "Are you sure you want to throw away your marriage over one mistake? Or maybe couples therapy could help you work through this." But for me, this isn't just about the affair. It's about the months of lying, the betrayal of trust, and the fact that it was with my stepsister of all people. The thought of trying to rebuild a relationship on that foundation seems impossible to me. The divorce process is now underway. Will moved out last week, and we're working on separating our finances and belongings. It's been difficult and emotional, but I know it's the right decision for me. Bella has been trying to contact me through various family members. She sent long messages apologizing and asking for a chance to explain herself. I've ignored all of them. I'm not interested in her explanations or excuses. My mom has been my rock through all of this. She's been staying with me, helping me sort through things and providing emotional support. She's furious with Will and Bella and fully supports my decision to divorce. My stepdad, on the other hand, has been more distant. I think he's struggling to reconcile his love for Bella with the hurt she's caused. He's made a few attempts to encourage me to forgive her, but I've shut those down quickly. The hardest part has been dealing with the constant questions and opinions from family and friends. Everyone seems to have an idea of what I should do, and it's exhausting trying to explain my decisions over and over. Some have suggested that I'm overreacting or that I should have expected something like this given Bella's behavior. Others have praised me for standing up for myself and not accepting the betrayal. It's a mix of support and judgment that I'm still learning to navigate. I've started seeing a therapist to help me process everything. It's been helpful to have a neutral party to talk to about my feelings and decisions. She's been supportive of my choice to divorce and has been helping me work through the anger and hurt. One of the most difficult aspects has been coming to terms with the fact that my marriage wasn't what I thought it was. I keep replaying moments from the past 6 months, wondering how I missed the signs. The feelings of doubt and insecurity that I wrote about in my original post have only intensified. I've also had to face the reality that my relationship with my stepsister was even worse than I realized. The jealousy and competition I felt from her went far beyond what I had imagined. It's forced me to reevaluate a lot of our past interactions and family dynamics. As for Will, he's still trying to convince me to reconsider. He sent flowers, written letters, and even showed up at my work once, which I quickly shut down. He claims he's ended things with Bella for good and wants to prove he can be trusted again. But for me, that ship has sailed. Bella, for her part, seems to be playing the victim to some degree. From what I've heard through family, she's telling people that she was swept up in a moment of weakness and that she never meant to hurt me. Some family members seem to be sympathetic to her, which is frustrating. I've had to set firm boundaries with my family about discussing Bella or the situation. I've made it clear that I'm not interested in updates about her life or her side of the story. Some family members have respected this, while others continue to push. The divorce proceedings are moving forward. We're working on dividing assets and figuring out what to do with our house. Thankfully, we don't have children, which makes the process somewhat simpler. Still, it's painful to dismantle the life we built together. I'm trying to focus on the future now. I've thrown myself into my work and have been spending more time with friends who are supportive. I'm also thinking about making some bigger life changes. Maybe a new job or even moving to a new city for a fresh start. There are moments when I question my decision, when I'm alone at night in our half-empty house or when I see happy couples out and about. But then I remind myself of the betrayal, the months of lies, and I know I'm making the right choice for myself. I won't lie. It's been incredibly difficult. There are days when I can barely get out of bed, when the weight of everything feels crushing. But there are also days when I feel stronger, when I'm proud of myself for standing up for what I deserve. Looking back at my original post, I can see now how much I was trying to convince myself that things weren't as bad as they seemed. I was so afraid of being seen as the jealous, insecure wife that I ignored my own instincts. I won't make that mistake again. To those who commented on my original post, urging me to trust my gut and investigate further, thank you. Your words gave me the courage to seek the truth, even though it was painful. So that's where things stand now. I'm getting divorced. I've cut ties with my stepsister, and I'm navigating a new family dynamic. It's not where I expected to be a month ago, but I'm taking it one day at a time. I'm still angry. I'm still hurt, but I'm also hopeful for the future. I know now that I deserve better than what Will and Bella did to me. I'm looking forward to rebuilding my life on my own terms. Thank you all for your support and advice. It's been a difficult journey, but I'm grateful for the clarity and strength I found along the way. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.